Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is R.S. Raghu, and with me is Anita Anand, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi chairs Brics Summit, says BRICS an influential voice for emerging economies of world. BRICS countries adopts a declaration after 13th summit in New Delhi. Calls for peace, rule of law, respect for human rights and democracy for all. New Delhi and Denmark jointly launch Center of Excellence on Offshore Wind as part of Green Strategic Partnership. India, Japan hold their 6th Maritime Affairs Dialogue in a virtual format. India-Australia 2+2 Ministerial Dialogue to be held on 11th of this month in New Delhi. Taliban agrees to allow 200 Americans and other foreign nationals to leave Afghanistan. And in US Open tennis, Nomak, Djokovic and Alexander Zverev enter men's semi-finals. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign at government facilities for those above 18 years is underway, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and help others get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. Prime Minister Narendra Modi today said that BRICS has made many achievements in the last 1.5 decades and it is an influential voice for the emerging economies of the world. In his opening remarks while chairing the 13th BRICS Summit in virtual format this evening, Mr. Modi said the platform has also been useful for focusing on the priorities of developing countries. He said BRICS has started several strong organizations such as the New Development Bank, Contingency Reserve Arrangement and Energy Research Cooperation Platform. Mr. Modi said it must be ensured that BRICS is more productive in the next 15 years. He said the theme that India has chosen for its leadership is BRICS at 15.
ब्रिक्स ने न्यू डेवलपमेंट बैंक, कंटीजेंसी रिजर्व अरेंजमेंट और एनर्जी रिसर्च कोऑपरेशन प्लेटफॉर्म जैसी मजबूत संस्थाओं का सृजन किया है। निसंदेह गर्व करने के लिए हमारे पास बहुत कुछ है, मगर यह भी महत्वपूर्ण है कि हम आत्मसंतुष्ट न हो और हमें यह सुनिश्चित करना है कि ब्रिक्स अगले 15 वर्षों में और परिणामदायी हो। भारत ने अपनी अध्यक्षता के लिए जो थीम चुना है वह यही प्राथमिकता दर्शाता है। ब्रिक्स एट 15 इंट्रा ब्रिक्स कोऑपरेशन फॉर कंटिन्यूटी, कंसोलिडेशन एंड कंसेंसस। ये 4 C एक प्रकार से हमारी ब्रिक्स भागीदारी के मूल सिद्धांत हैं।
The Prime Minister said in November the water resources ministers of the 5 member countries will meet for the first time in the BRICS format. Mr. Modi said the BRICS counter-terrorism action plan was adopted recently and the space agencies of member countries are also working together in remote sensing satellite constellations. He said intra-BRICS trade will get easier with better cooperation between the customs departments of member nations.
हमारी अंतरिक्ष एजेंसियों के बीच रिमोट सेंसिंग सैटेलाइट कॉन्स्टेलेशन समझौते से सहयोग का एक नया अध्याय शुरू हो रहा है। हमारे कस्टम्स विभागों के बीच सहयोग से इंट्रा ब्रिक्स व्यापार आसान होगा। एक वर्चुअल नेटवर्क के रूप में ब्रिक्स वैक्सीनेशन अनुसंधान और विकास केंद्र शुरू करने पर भी सहमति बनी है। ब्रिक्स अलायंस ऑन ग्रीन टूरिज्म एक और नई पहल है। इन सभी नए इनिशिएटिव्स ने न सिर्फ हमारे नागरिकों को लाभ मिलेगा, हमारा ब्रिक्स संगठन भी आने वाले समय में प्रासंगिक रहेगा।
Thanking all the members, Mr. Modi said India has received full cooperation from all members during its chairship of BRICS. The meeting is being attended by Russian President Vladimir Putin, Chinese President Xi Jinping, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, and Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro. BRICS brings together 5 of the largest developing countries of the world, representing 41% of the global population, 24% of the global GDP, and 16% of the global trade. As part of India's ongoing chairship of BRICS in 2021, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is chairing the 13th Brics Summit. This is the second time Prime Minister Narendra Modi is chairing the BRICS Summit. He had chaired the Goa Summit in 2016. The Indian chairship of BRICS this year coincides with the 15th anniversary of BRICS. The summit is expected to focus extensively on the situation in Afghanistan.
BRICS nations have reiterated their commitment to enhancing intra-BRICS cooperation under the 3 pillars: political and security, economic and financial, and cultural and people-to-people exchanges. In New Delhi declaration adopted after the 13th BRICS Summit, the member countries recalled their shared values of peace, rule of law, respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms and democracy for all. They pledged to promote a more inclusive, equitable and representative multipolar international system with the United Nations at its center. They also welcomed their decision to adopt the BRICS Counter-Terrorism Action Plan for the implementation of the BRICS Counter-Terrorism Strategy. They expressed concern at the continuing conflicts and violence in different parts of the world. BRICS nations also endorsed the position taken by their foreign ministers at their last meeting on the situation in Africa, the Middle East and North Africa, the Palestinian-Israeli issue, the Syrian Arab Republic, Yemen, Afghanistan, Korean Peninsula, the Iran nuclear issue, and Myanmar. The BRICS countries said they are following the latest developments in Afghanistan with concern. BRICS countries have called for refraining from violence and settling the situation by peaceful means. They stressed the need to contribute to fostering an all-inclusive intra-Afghan dialogue to ensure stability, civil peace, law and order in the country. They strongly condemned the terrorist attack near the Hamid Karzai Kabul International Airport that resulted in a large number of deaths and injuries. They underscored the priority of fighting terrorism, including preventing attempts by terrorist organizations to use Afghan territory as terrorist sanctuary and to carry out attacks against other countries, as well as drug trade within Afghanistan. They emphasized the need to address the humanitarian situation and to uphold human rights, including those of women, children and minorities. BRICS nations also emphasized that the international community has a collective responsibility to work together against the COVID-19 pandemic. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that he was delighted to host the virtual BRICS Summit in the 15th year of BRICS today. In a tweet, Mr. Modi said BRICS has taken many new initiatives during India's chairship. He called for BRICS to contribute to post-COVID global recovery on the motto, build back resiliently, innovatively, credibly and sustainably. The Prime Minister said the member countries discussed important regional and global issues. He thanked BRICS partners whose support helped India's chair achieve many firsts. Mr. Modi said BRICS agenda now spans culture and communication, sports and space, disaster resilience and digital health, employment and environment and more.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on BRICS Summit 2021. In conversation are Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
Good evening. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji hosted the 13th BRICS Summit in a virtual format earlier this evening. It was the third time in the 15-year history of BRICS that India was hosting the summit after 2012 and 2016, and the Prime Minister himself second time as the BRICS chair. In his opening remarks, Prime Minister noted that we have to ensure that BRICS is more productive over the next 15 years. The theme that India has chosen for its presidency reflects this priority. BRICS at 15, intra-BRICS cooperation for continuity, consolidation and consensus. The presidents of the other 4 BRICS member states Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil, Vladimir Putin of Russia, Chinese President Xi Jinping, and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa all made brief opening statements outlining the priorities they felt needed to be focused upon. The Chinese president spoke broadly of enhanced BRIC cooperation, while Presidents Ramaphosa and Bolsonaro spoke of how cooperation within the organization had helped to combat COVID. It was President Putin who raised the issue of Afghanistan right in his opening remarks, particularly mentioning that Afghanistan should not become a threat to its neighboring countries and a source of terrorism or drug trafficking. The New Delhi declaration issued at the end of today's summit comprehensively addressed all of these issues and many more. We are joined today by Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhan, who will help us understand the significance of this summit, given that the world is still in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic. Good evening, Ashok. Why
Good evening,
is this
Nilova.
summit so significant? It is clearly very timely, given what has happened in Afghanistan in the past month, particularly. Why is this so significant at this point?
You're very right, Nilova, when you say that the summit is very relevant, particularly in the context of developments in Afghanistan as they have taken place, particularly over the last 1 month, but even a little before that also. And of course, there are a large number of other issues, as you did say that the theme of the objective of the summit that was identified by India was BRICS at 15, intra-BRICS cooperation for continuity, consolidation and consensus. The 4 C's, which are the basic principles of the BRICS partnership. But coming to Afghanistan, extremely significant because I don't think anyone had really expected that there is going to be such a rapid change of government and that the Taliban will be able to take over in Afghanistan. It will be able to, without a fight, it will be able to take over Kabul. And then very soon, now just 2 days ago, there has been announcement of a government. There has been this concern. 3 of the BRICS countries are neighboring countries of Afghanistan, Russia, China and India. China has a small boundary through the Wakhan corridor with Afghanistan. As far as Russia is concerned, the 3 Central Asian states which are neighboring, they have borders with Afghanistan. And as far as India is concerned, also it is a neighbor of Afghanistan. So the threat of terrorism, because the government that has come in, that has many of the topmost members who are proscribed, who appear on the list of sanctioned terrorists in the UN list, also in the US list. So I think there has been this feeling and anxiety amongst many countries, not only the neighboring countries, but far apart also, that the territory of Afghanistan should not be used for fomenting, for spreading terror in its neighborhood and in other parts of the world. So the statement, as you said, it's a very comprehensive statement, about 74 paragraphs in all and covering all aspects of human endeavor, bilateral, the activities of BRICS over the last 1 year, which have been very significant and substantive. So there is 1 paragraph on Afghanistan, but it is extremely substantive. It is concise and precise, but very clear and substantive. And it conveys a strong sense of consensus amongst the 5 countries. First, it condemns in no uncertain terms the aspect of terrorism and drug trafficking, and it says that the territory of Afghanistan should not be used for carrying out terrorist attacks in its neighborhood or against other countries. It should not become a problem for its neighbors. Whatever is happening, developments in Afghanistan should not become a cause of problems in its neighborhood. In terms of humanitarian aspects, also it says that because we know that there is deep tragedy and sort of catastrophe that is engulfed Afghanistan because so much of hunger, there is lack of medicines. So there also the statement refers to the humanitarian assistance which comes from the United Nations and members and UN agencies, and it should be allowed free access and entry without any restriction. And reference is also made to the UN Security Council and its resolutions in terms of resolving the issues in Afghanistan through dialogue. There is a special mention of protection and promotion of human rights, of minorities, of women and children. So as you can see, it addresses all the concerns and all the worries and anxieties of different countries as far as protection of human rights is concerned, drug trafficking is concerned, and also as far as terrorism, use of Afghan territory for terrorism purposes is concerned. Nilova.
Look, I'll interrupt you briefly there. And, you talked about the issue of consensus. Now, there are suggestions that China has been a little different in its approach bilaterally with Afghanistan, in the sense that they have announced things like $31 million in aid and so on. So also in the other aspects of, the specific deliverables that India wants to deliver on this particular inter-BRICS cooperation aspects that it is chairing this year, even in the political and security bloc measures which it wants to take. Reform of the multilateral system is another very major, and even there China has a slightly variant view from, say, India and Russia, which have openly declared the requirement, of course Brazil and South Africa, which have openly declared the requirement for an enhanced, changed Security Council and United Nations multilateral system. So the issue of consensus then becomes a little worrisome, wouldn't you say?
Well, you have a point there, Nilova. And, first to come to this issue of $31 million of aid coming to Afghanistan. So I think this is, I would say that it is very much in tune in terms of the humanitarian assistance that the resolution has spoken about. And there they have said, whether it is food items or clothing or vaccines or medicines. And this is exactly what China has said, that these are the items that they will be providing in the $31 million of aid and assistance. So while their pronouncements might be a little different from the pronouncements of some of the other countries as far as these issues are concerned, also in terms of expansion of the UN Security Council. But I think here, as far as the BRICS forum is concerned and that platform is concerned, they have thought it appropriate to go along with the consensus as has been decided by the other countries. They have decided not to stay back and either mention that they have a slightly different position. So they have gone along with the consensus as it has evolved, both on the multilateral trading system, reform of the multilateral trading system, as well as on the issue of Afghanistan and particularly supply of humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan.
The other aspect that has obviously overtaken this whole summit is COVID and the global economic recovery post-pandemic. In this particular aspect, the work of the new development bank that BRICS has been very significant, as Secretary MEA pointed out in his briefing. Now, the other interesting thing was the vaccine research center that BRICS is planning. So there are some very real concrete measures that BRICS has taken up, and a lot of these are Prime Minister's own suggestions from previous summits. So what is it about BRICS that makes it so unique in these aspects?
I think as the Prime Minister, thank you, Nilova, I think those are very interesting observations that you have made. As the Prime Minister himself said that BRICS over the last 15 years, it has a number of achievements to its credit. And it has really emerged as the voice of the emerging economies. And it has also is being seen as putting forth the views and interests and aspirations of developing countries. So in that sense, I think it brings together, these are 5 major economies in the world. After all, China is the second largest, India is the third largest economy, and similarly Russia, Brazil, and South Africa are also significant economies in their own right. So I think, and they're all of them also developing countries, so to say. So they bring a certain perspective to the global issues. And so, when you mention about the economy and the impetus that is required to the economy in all these countries, India, it is doing well. I think China is also doing quite well. Other countries also, so New Development Bank has played a very important role. And there are very innovative and far-reaching ideas and thoughts that have been put into this. As the Prime Minister mentioned that, notwithstanding the fact that it was a COVID year, more than 150 meetings have been held, 20 of them ministerial, and many new initiatives have been taken. And this Brics Vaccine Research and Development Center, that is also a very significant concrete outcome of this, India's chairmanship of the BRICS for the last year. And similarly, all the 4 items that India has adopted, whether it is promoting people-to-people contact, it is youth digitization for achieving the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, or counter-terrorism, or a joint action plan on counter-terrorism. I think these are very significant areas in which very concrete achievements have been made. So as the Prime Minister said, we can pat ourselves on the back, but it is not good to sit on our laurels. And the next 15 years should be even more productive than what we have been able to achieve over the last 15 years. Nilova.
I suppose that is what makes the BRICS format so unique, because of the comprehensive nature of what it is that it is trying to address, as you very rightly said, emerging economies and all of the aspects, the different perspectives on development that these 5 countries bring. But I'm afraid, Ashok, that we have run right out of time in this very interesting discussion. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amid a developing political situation in Kabul, India and Russia held a first detailed and extensive review meeting on Wednesday and raised concern over the potential terror threats to both countries. The meeting was held between Russian Secretary of Security Council Nikolai Patrushev and India's National Security Advisor NSA Ajit Doval on Wednesday. In the meeting, India raised concerns over the presence of international terrorist groups in Afghanistan, which can pose a threat to Central Asia and India. India also highlighted that Islamic radicalization and extremism will encourage the flow of weapons and terrorist groups, which can increase the chances of smuggling and trafficking across Afghan borders. India also emphasized that Afghanistan's soil should not be used to spread terrorism in the neighboring countries. It also raised concerns over Pakistan's link to the Taliban and other international terrorist organizations. Mr. Doval also highlighted that the links of Pakistan's ISI with terror groups in Afghanistan such as Lashkar-e-Taiba, LET and Jaish-e-Mohammed JEM during the meeting. As the situation is evolving fast in Kabul, India has also expressed concerns for the security of the Hindu and Sikh minorities in Afghanistan. India will be hosting the inaugural India-Australia 2+2 ministerial dialogue on 11th of this month, September, in New Delhi. Australian Foreign Minister Marise Payne and Defence Minister Peter Dutton will be visiting India from 10th to 12th September to take part in the dialogue. From the Indian side, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar will lead the delegation, which will comprise of officials from the Ministries of Defence and External Affairs.
India and Japan held their 6th Maritime Affairs Dialogue in a virtual format today. The consultations involved exchanges on developments in the maritime security environment, regional cooperation activities and opportunities for cooperation between the 2 countries in the Indo-Pacific region. This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
Welcome back to World News. In Afghanistan, 200 Americans and other foreigners who remain in the country are set to depart on charter flights from Kabul today. A U.S. official said to a news agency that the new Taliban government agreed to their evacuation, but the official could not say whether the American civilians and other foreign nationals were among the people stranded for days in the northern Afghan city of Mazar-e Sharif because their private charters had not been allowed to depart. Former Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has apologized to the people of Afghanistan after fleeing to take refuge in the United Arab Emirates. In a statement shared on Twitter yesterday, Mr. Ghani said he had no choice but to leave the country in order to avoid widespread violence. He also denied the baseless allegations that he had traveled to UAE with huge amount of money.
Former Mauritius Prime Minister Narendra has been moved to India for treatment after he tested positive for COVID-19. The opposition Labour Party leader was brought to India today aboard an air ambulance. He was transferred from a private clinic by a Mauritian medical team to Sir Sehusagar Ramgoolam Airport tarmac. He has not travelled abroad since 2014 when he lost the general elections and was arrested.
In North Macedonia, 14 people lost their lives yesterday in a fire at a makeshift hospital treating COVID-19 patients. Public prosecutors confirmed 14 deaths. They said they were investigating whether there were more victims, as reported locally. This is a very sad day, Health Minister Venko Phillips wrote on Twitter. North Macedonia has a population of about 2 million people, and with COVID vaccination rates below 30%, it has seen a recent surge in cases and deaths. And now a report from the business world.
The Sensex at the Bombay Stock Exchange added 55 points to end at 58,305. Nifty at the National Stock Exchange also gained just 16 points to close at 17,369. Among global markets, most key Asian stock markets were trading lower today. Japan's Nikkei 225 index lost 0.6%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng plunged 2.3%. It was dragged down by Chinese tech stocks after Chinese authorities told gaming firms to resolutely curb incorrect tendencies such as focusing only on money and only on traffic. South Korea's Kospi also fell 1.5%. It was also weighed down by regulatory scrutiny of local tech players, but China's Shanghai Composite rose 0.5% and Singapore's Straits was flat. Oil prices traded lower in intraday trade. Brent crude was trading around $72.50 per barrel. In the forex market, the rupee appreciated 10 paise to close at 73 rupees and 50 paise against the US dollar. This is Lalema Aneja Dang for World News, All India Radio.
In US Open, number one Nomak Djokovic inched closer to a calendar Grand Slam as he reached the semi-finals at the US Open, beating Italian Matteo Berrettini in 4 sets on last night. And Olympic gold medalist Alexander Zverev has also entered in the semi-finals after defeating unseeded Lloyd Harris of South Africa in straight sets. In women's singles, 18-year-old British sensation Emma Raducanu reached US Open women's semi-finals after beating Tokyo Olympian champion Swiss Belinda Bencic. And in the other semi-final, 19-year-old Canadian Leila Fernandez will meet number 2 seed Arina Sabalenka of Belarus tomorrow. And now let's take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Guardian says Syria cement plant at center of terror finance investigation used by Western spies. The Globe and Mail reports Australia won't allow UN climate goals in free trade deal with UK. Washington Post writes Britain prepares to force back migrant boats crossing the channel, spurring war of words with France. South China Morning Post reports Philippine Defense Minister says US alliance needs comprehensive review to address rise of China. Sydney Morning Herald says Australia-Indonesia signed anti-terror pact as report warns of new attacks.
A quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi chairs Brics Summit, says BRICS an influential voice for emerging economies of world. BRICS countries adopts declaration after 13th summit in New Delhi recalls peace, rule of law, respect for human rights and democracy for all. New Delhi and Denmark jointly launched Center of Excellence on Offshore Wind as part of Green Strategic Partnership. India-Japan hold their 6th Maritime Affairs Dialogue in a virtual format. India-Australia 2+2 ministerial dialogue to be held on 11th of this month in New Delhi. Taliban agrees to allow 200 Americans and other foreign nationals to leave Afghanistan. And in US Open tennis, Nomak Djokovic and Alexander Zverev enter men's semi-finals. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Tajikistan. And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.